Have you ever left a high-stakes conversation, like maybe a massive quarterly review or a pitch meeting, and you just feel completely invigorated?
Oh, yeah, you think you totally nailed it.
Right. You walked in nervous, you laid out your whole vision, and you felt like you got a solid, undeniable yes. You walk out of the room thinking, like, your project is absolutely greenlit. You might even go celebrate with your team.
Pop some champagne, yeah.
Exactly. But then, slowly, over the next few weeks, something incredibly strange happens. Or, well, I guess I should say nothing happens.
The dreaded silence.
Yes. The budget you were supposedly promised never actually materializes. The support from other departments completely vanishes into thin air.
And your emails are met with these really vague delays.
Right, like, oh, we're just reviewing the timeline. And when you sit back, deeply confused, and you replay the actual literal words that were spoken to you in that room, you suddenly get this chilling realization.
You missed the hidden code.
Exactly. What you thought was a resounding yes was actually a very polite, highly constructed, flawlessly executed no. So, welcome to the deep dive.
It is honestly a universally painful experience, and it's precisely the invisible mechanism we are going to expose today.
Yeah, and we've got some incredible source material for this.
We really do. We are pulling our insights from a truly fascinating document. It's a guide specifically designed for C1 and C2 advanced English learners, and it comes to us from a curriculum originally titled Pathlight English.
Which is such a cool resource.
It really is. Now, while this material was ostensibly built to help non-native speakers achieve, absolute fluency, the reality and the reason we're spending an hour dissecting this is that native speakers get hopelessly tangled up in these exact same social webs every single day.
Oh, absolutely. We all misread the code all the time.
Because advanced listening is not only hearing the words, it is noticing what the words are doing socially.
And I want to pause on that because that right there is the core message of the source document, and it feels genuinely profound. It completely shifts how you think about communication.
It's a massive paradigm shift. It's the entire crux of the matter, really.
Yeah, it sounds deceptively simple, but it changes everything.
Because when we are taught language, whether we're toddlers learning our native tongue or adults studying a foreign one, we are taught to focus almost entirely on the dictionary definition of the vocabulary.
Right, like, what does this word mean in a vacuum?
Exactly. We learn grammar, syntax, literal definitions. We're trained to treat language as this simple, straightforward transaction of data from one brain to another.
Like a file transfer.
Yes, like a USB drive.
Yeah.
But in the real world, and especially in professional, high-stakes, or corporate environments, language is very rarely just a data transfer.
It's way more complicated than that.
It is a highly sophisticated tool for social maneuvering. It's about protecting complex relationships, preserving delicate workplace hierarchies, managing fragile egos.
Oh, the egos. So many egos.
So many. And navigating institutional risk. So when the Pathlight English Guide tells us we need to notice what the words are doing socially, it's demanding that we look at the invisible interpersonal forces that are actively shaping the conversation beneath the surface of the vocabulary.
It honestly reminds me of that iconic visual from the movie The Matrix.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You know the scene where the numbers and symbols are just like raining down the screen? If you are just a regular person looking at it, it just looks like green gibberish.
Right, it's just code.
But then Neo undergoes this transformation, and he starts to see the actual structure of reality operating behind the code. He sees the walls, the agents, the rules of the simulation.
He sees what it all actually means.
Exactly. Yeah. Knowing your vocabulary and your grammar rules, that is just staring at the green numbers on the screen. It is entirely surface level.
Yeah, you're not seeing the agents yet.
Right. The real fluency, the true elite mastery of human communication, is decoding the polite, invisible rules of social maneuvering.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. Because once you actually begin to see the social function of language, you absolutely cannot unsee it.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. You start to realize that a vast majority of our professional communication is heavily, heavily coded. We rely on hedging, implication, soft disagreement, and indirect feedback just to keep the massive, complicated gears of human cooperation turning smoothly.
Because if we were all just blunt all the time, everything would break down.
Exactly. So if you only listen to the literal words a person is saying, you are going to fundamentally misinterpret the reality of your situation.
You're going to be the person who thinks the multi-million-dollar project is approved.
When in reality, it has just been politely, diplomatically assassinated right in front of you.
And absolutely nobody wants to be that person. You do not want to be the one missing the social cues. So that is our mission for this deep dive.
Let's lay it out.
We're going to explore 4 crucial, high-stakes categories of subtle English drawn from the Pathlight English Guide. We're going to look at soft disagreement, hidden concern, indirect feedback, and careful agreement.
Those are 4 very dangerous zones in office life.
They really are. We're going to dissect 8 specific phrases, look at their literal dictionary meanings, and then uncover the hidden social operation the speaker is actually executing.
And I highly encourage you, as you listen to us unpack this, to actively think about the conversations you have had in your own life this past week.
Oh, yeah. Think about your emails.
Think about the emails you've sent, the meetings you've sat through, the feedback you've received from your manager. I guarantee you are going to recognize these exact patterns everywhere once you know what to look for.
Okay, let's jump right into the deep end. We are going to start with what the guide identifies as soft disagreement.
The most dangerous one.
Seriously, let's be totally honest with ourselves. Disagreeing with someone is arguably the most socially dangerous act you can perform in a professional communication setting.
It is incredibly dangerous. And the reason it's so dangerous goes back to deep human psychology and evolutionary biology.
Right, because we are wired to hate conflict.
Well, disagreement fundamentally threatens the ego and the social standing of the person you are talking to. Humans are tribal creatures. We rely on group cohesion for survival.
So when you disagree, you're threatening that cohesion.
Exactly. When you bluntly tell someone they are wrong, you are not just correcting a data point, you are threatening their status within the tribe. You are threatening the harmony of the team.
Wow, okay. That puts a lot of weight on it.
It does. You do it too bluntly, you instantly trigger a defensive reaction. The other person's amygdala, the threat detection center of the brain, lights up.
They go into fight or flight.
They experience a physical stress response. And the moment that happens, they completely stop listening to your logic. They stop processing your rational arguments, and they just start defending their territory at all costs.
Which is incredibly counterproductive if your actual goal is to solve a business problem together.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the very first phrase highlighted in the source material. I am not sure that is ideal.
Oh, man. I've heard this one so many times.
Haven't we all? Now, imagine you are in a boardroom. You have just spent 4 months designing a massive structural reorganization for your department. You present the final slide. The room is silent.
Always a terrifying silence.
Right. Finally, the VP of operations leans forward, steeples their fingers, and says, I am not sure that is ideal.
Ouch.
I want to pause reality right there and ask you about the literal meaning of those words. If we strip away all human context, what does it actually mean to simply lack certainty about something being absolute perfection?
Well, literally, I am not sure I lack 100% empirical certainty.
Right.
That is ideal, that this represents the ultimate Platonic ideal of perfection. It sounds almost philosophical.
Well, of course it isn't ideal. Nothing in the mortal realm is ideal. We're just trying to hit our quarterly targets here.
Yeah, if you parse it literally, you are merely expressing a very mild philosophical doubt about whether a particular solution is the absolute best possible outcome in the entire universe.
Leaving plenty of room to think it's still a good idea.
Exactly. You are leaving plenty of logical room for the possibility that the idea is still very, very good, highly effective, and entirely workable, just perhaps slightly short of divine perfection.
But the implication, the actual social function of those words in that boardroom is completely different, isn't it?
Entirely opposite. The implication is that the speaker actually thinks your reorganization plan is fundamentally bad.
They don't think it's almost perfect.
Not at all. They think it is deeply flawed, highly risky, or just plain wrong. But they recognize the social danger of saying, this is a terrible plan.
Because of the whole amygdala fight or flight thing?
Right. So they want to sound diplomatic and careful. It is essentially a polite warning. It is a stop sign wrapped in velvet.
The guide provides a really crucial register note here. It explicitly classifies this phrase as professional, indirect, and careful.
Which is exactly what we just described.
And I want to spend some time on that word careful, because when we use this phrase, we aren't being careful with the facts. The facts are clear to us. The idea is bad. What we are being careful with is the other person's feelings, right?
We are being careful with their face.
Oh, like face saving.
Yes. In sociology and sociolinguistics, there is a fundamental concept called face saving. Face refers to a person's public self-image, their dignity, and their sense of respect within a social interaction.
So everyone in the office has a face they're trying to protect.
In any professional environment, everyone is constantly working to maintain their own face And if they are smart, the face of their colleagues.
That makes sense.
When you look at someone and say, that is a bad idea, you are launching a direct attack on their face. You are telling them in front of the tribe that they lack judgment, competence, or intelligence.
That's a face-threatening act.
Exactly. But when you use indirect language, when you say, I am not sure that is ideal, you are removing the attack vector.
Let's weave in the example sentence provided in the text. Imagine your colleague suggests cutting the budget for customer support to fund a new marketing drive. And you respond, I am not sure that is ideal for this audience.
Notice how the strategic addition of for this audience softens the blow even further.
Oh, that's clever.
It implies your idea is brilliant, of course, and your financial logic is sound, but perhaps these specific external people just won't appreciate it.
So it's not the idea's fault, it's the audience's fault.
It brilliantly shifts the blame for the rejection away from the creator of the idea and onto external, uncontrollable circumstances. You aren't rejecting them. The audience is rejecting them.
Let's look at the mini dialogue the source uses to really illustrate this dynamic. Imagine you have a junior employee who has just drafted a very aggressive email to a difficult client.
Oh boy.
They turn to you, their manager, and they ask, should we send the message exactly as it is?
And you look at the screen, realize the email will probably get the company sued, and you reply calmly.
I am not sure that is ideal.
The tension in that exchange is palpable. The junior employee thinks the work is done. They are ready to execute.
And the manager has to step in and immediately halt the process.
But they do it smoothly. The usage note in the curriculum points out that at the C1-C2 level, the listener must learn to hear the polite warning buried inside this phrase.
What I find so fascinating here is the specific choice of the word ideal. Why do we reach for that specific vocabulary word? Why not just say, I am not sure that is good, or I'm not sure that works?
The psychology behind the word ideal is brilliant. Ideal sets an impossibly high standard.
Right.
If I tell you your work isn't good, I am directly insulting the quality of your labor. I'm calling it subpar.
Which hurts the ego.
But if I tell you your work isn't ideal, I am merely stating that it hasn't reached an impossible utopian state of perfection. It actually flatters you in a strange way.
Because it assumes my normal work usually is perfect.
Exactly. It frames my rejection of your work as a mutual collaborative pursuit of excellence. The subtext is, we are both elite professionals with incredibly high standards, and we shouldn't settle for anything less than absolute perfection.
So it saves face for absolutely everyone involved.
It transforms an adversarial rejection into a collaborative optimization process.
So practically speaking, what does this mean for you, the listener? If you propose a solution and your boss or a key stakeholder says, I am not sure that is ideal, you cannot make the mistake of arguing that it is good enough.
No, do not do that.
You cannot say, well, maybe it isn't ideal, but it will work for now. You need to immediately recognize that they are deploying a polite no.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You have to pivot your strategy instantly. You should respond with something like, what specific adjustments would you suggest? Or where do you see the primary friction points in this approach?
Because if you push forward
because you mistakenly believe they are only mildly uncertain about its absolute perfection, you are going to walk your career right off a cliff.
Well said. All right, this brings us to the second phrase in the soft disagreement category. And it is a phrase I hear literally every single day.
Let me guess.
The phrase is, I see your point, but...
Yes. The classic.
Now, if we do a literal breakdown of the first half of this sentence, what is actually being claimed, does this just mean I visually or cognitively comprehend the argument you just made?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I have successfully processed the audio waves entering my ear, my auditory cortex has translated them, and my brain has formed a basic understanding of the data you just transmitted.
On a purely literal level, yes. It is a basic statement of cognitive comprehension. It means, I have heard the sounds you made and I understand the logical structure you're presenting.
But the implication, according to the source material, is far more aggressive and socially complex.
It is a classic rhetorical bait and switch.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Bait and switch.
The implication, the social action occurring beneath the surface, is that the speaker is acknowledging the other person's idea right before entirely discarding it to disagree, or to inject a completely different viewpoint.
And the guide notes that the register here is extremely common in professional and thoughtful conversation.
It sounds very reasonable, very measured.
Let's look at the example sentence from the curriculum. Imagine a heated debate about a product launch. One person says, we have to launch now to beat the competitor.
And the other responds, I see your point, but I think we need more context.
The architectural structure of that sentence is crucial to understand. The first half, I see your point, is the spoonful of sugar.
It is the anesthetic.
Yes. And the second half, I think we need more context, is the scalpel. It is the actual disagreement.
And the word gut is the hinge that swings the door entirely shut on the other person's idea.
Let's run this mini dialogue in a fast-paced tech startup. The lead developer says, we should make the change to the code base today.
The project manager, knowing the testing isn't finished, replies, I see your point, but we should check the data first.
The usage note in the source material states something incredibly important for language learners and professionals alike. The important idea usually comes after but.
Always.
I have to push back a little here, though. If the important idea is a second half, why do we bother with the first half? Why do we play this game?
What do you mean?
It feels incredibly inefficient. The word but basically acts as a linguistic eraser. It completely wipes away whatever came before it.
That's true.
If someone says, you are a wonderful person, but you don't care about the first part, you are bracing for impact. So why do we use this inefficient eraser?
You are right that it is a linguistic eraser, and from a purely informational standpoint, it is inefficient. The first half of the sentence is entirely transactional.
Good paying a toll.
Exactly. It is a social toll you're forced to pay to get to the part you actually care about, your own opinion. But we do it because human beings are not purely informational machines. We are deeply emotional ones.
Oh, back to the amygdala.
It connects back to the psychology of validation. As social creatures, we have a profound fundamental need to feel heard, seen, and understood by our peers.
Right.
If you present an idea and I immediately contradict you by saying we need to check the data first, your brain interprets my blunt contradiction as an active social threat. As we discussed earlier, your defenses go up.
So I stop listening to you.
You are no longer evaluating my logic regarding the data. You are just looking for rhetorical ammunition to defeat my argument and restore your status.
So it is biological self-sabotage to just disagree directly.
Exactly. But when you start the sentence with, I see your point, you actively soothe that biological triage. You are sending a comforting signal to their brain.
You're telling them they're safe.
You are telling them you are safe, your status in the tribe is secure, you have been recognized, I acknowledge that you are a smart, rational person who makes sensible points. Once that baseline of validation is established, their neurological defenses lower. Their heart rate literally stays calmer. And because they feel safe, they are now much more receptive to the correction or the disagreement that inevitably follows the buck.
It is almost like a verbal handshake before a boxing match. It establishes the rules of engagement. You are saying, we are both reasonable professionals. I respect you. Now, here's why your plan is completely unworkable.
That is precisely why it is universally adopted in thoughtful corporate conversation. It allows teams to engage in rigorous, necessary debate without constantly destroying their interpersonal relationships.
So what's the takeaway for the listener here?
The absolute key takeaway is to never get distracted by the validation. When you hear your boss say, I see your point, do not pat yourself on the back. Do not assume you have won the argument. Brace yourself. Because the real message, the rejection, is coming right after the but.
Okay, so we have survived the minefield of active disagreement. But what happens when the idea itself isn't necessarily terrible, but the execution of it is a ticking time bomb?
Moving on to section 2.
Yes, this leads us beautifully into the next category from the guide, which is called hidden concern. If soft disagreement is hitting the brakes on an idea, hidden concern is frantically waving a yellow caution flag when we spot a massive risk on the horizon.
This is a fascinating area of sociolinguistics, because when we spot a massive risk, say, a legal compliance issue or a budget deficit, our primal instinct might be to shout, look out, or this entire project is going to fail.
Right. You want to raise the alarm.
But in a structured professional environment, panic is highly contagious. Furthermore, blunt, alarmist warnings can often make you look uncooperative, dramatic, or not a team player.
And nobody wants that label.
So professionals have evolved a way to wrap their most severe concerns in very specific, incredibly soft language.
Which brings us to phrase 3. That might be tricky. Now, I have to be honest, I get genuinely frustrated by this one.
I know, it's a weird one.
If I look up the word tricky in the dictionary, what is the literal meaning? It means something that requires a bit of cleverness, a bit of skill, maybe a little dexterity. Sure.
It sounds like a puzzle. It sounds like a slightly difficult level in a video game or magic trick. Does it literally just mean something is a little bit complicated?
On the surface, absolutely. Literally, it implies a situation that requires a delicate touch or a clever workaround. It sounds playful. It sounds like a minor, engaging challenge.
But the implication, according to the source material, is nowhere near playful. The guide is very clear that when a professional uses this phrase, it actually means they see a real problem, a major headache, or a severe, potentially catastrophic risk.
That is the core paradox of the phrase. When a seasoned project manager looks at a deployment timeline and says, "That might be tricky," they are not talking about a fun little puzzle to solve over coffee.
No, they are not.
They are looking at a catastrophic failure of logistics. They're seeing a massive budget shortfall or a timeline that defies the literal laws of physics.
The register note in the curriculum says this phrase is soft, conversational, and diplomatic. Let's look at the example sentence provided. Changing the deadline again might be tricky. Think about the reality of what is happening in that scenario. Changing a major project deadline, again, usually involves enraging a key client, throwing multiple internal departments into absolute chaos, forcing staff to work over the weekend, and bleeding money.
It's an absolute disaster.
It is a disaster. But by calling it tricky, the speaker artificially shrinks the disaster down to a manageable conversational size.
Let's weave in the mini dialogue. Imagine an overly optimistic sales director bursts into the production room and says, "Great news, the client loves it. Can we move the launch to tomorrow?"
Oh, the poor engineers.
Right. And the lead engineer, knowing the servers aren't provisioned, stares at them and replies, "That might be tricky." The usage note says, "Tricky" can be a gentle way to say difficult.
Very gentle.
But I have to push back on the efficiency and transparency of this. Why do highly paid business professionals use a slightly playful, almost childish word like tricky to describe potentially catastrophic company-ending deadlines?
It's a fair question.
Isn't this just lying? Are we setting teams up for failure by obscuring the severity of the danger? Why is corporate culture so obsessed with sugarcoating disaster?
It is incredibly frustrating if you value absolute transparency, yes. It feels like obfuscation.
Yeah.
But within the ecosystem of corporate culture, it is actually a highly evolved survival mechanism.
Okay, how so?
If we view this through the lens of emotional intelligence and group dynamics, we have to recognize that extreme language creates extreme reactions. If the engineer replies to the sales director by saying, "That is impossible, it will destroy the team, crash the servers, and ruin the product," they have instantly escalated the situation.
They've created a crisis right there in the room.
They have created a crisis, and more importantly, they have positioned themselves as an obstacle. They are now the enemy of the sales director's success.
And nobody wants to be perceived as the roadblock.
Exactly. But if the engineer says, "That might be tricky," they are actively de-escalating the tension. They are signaling that a massive problem exists, but they are doing it with a calm, conversational tone that prevents an amygdala hijack in the sales director.
It's a way of maintaining the illusion of absolute control.
It communicates, yes, there are massive, potentially fatal obstacles, but we are clever, rational professionals, and we can navigate them without losing our minds.
It's the verbal equivalent of the internet meme with the dog sitting in the room that is completely engulfed in flames, saying, "This is fine."
It is exactly that meme. But strategically, it is also a subtle invitation for the other person to think critically. When I say, "That might be tricky," I am prompting you to lean in and ask why. What are the roadblocks?
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm guiding you to discover the disaster for yourself, rather than aggressively forcing my reality onto you. Socratic method, essentially. And psychological research shows that when people discover the roadblocks themselves, they are infinitely more likely to accept that their plan needs to change, rather than fighting you on it.
That is a phenomenal point. You are leading them to the water, but making them realize they are thirsty.
Exactly.
This brings us to phrase 4, the second item under hidden concern. I would be careful with that.
This is an absolute classic of office diplomacy.
Let's start with the literal breakdown. Is this simply a mild, friendly suggestion to exercise caution? Like a parent saying, "Watch your step," when someone is walking on a wet floor or near a ledge?
On a purely literal basis, it is a very gentle piece of advice. You are simply advocating for the other person to adopt a posture of carefulness in their future actions.
But the implication detailed in the text tells a much darker story. The guide says it suggests caution without giving a direct command, and it is a strong signal of risk.
The operative word there is strong. It sounds incredibly mild, almost breezy, but it carries immense professional weight.
So what does it really mean?
When someone says this to you, it means if you proceed on this exact path, You are going to encounter severe negative consequences, be it political, financial, or legal. And I am officially, verbally going on the record as having warned you so I am not caught in the blast radius.
The register note classifies this as useful in advice, feedback, and professional discussion. The example sentence they provide perfectly illustrates the stakes. I would be careful with that wording.
That is such a common high-stakes scenario. The specific wording in an email to a vendor or a clause in a contract can have massive cascading legal or interpersonal consequences.
Picture this mini dialogue. A frustrated account manager is drafting an email after a terrible meeting. They say to their colleague, I want to say the client was completely wrong.
And the seasoned colleague looks over their shoulder and says quietly, I would be careful with that.
The usage note explicitly states that this phrase often signals risk, but I want to really dig into the specific grammar of this phrase because I think it reveals a massive amount about how power operates in the workplace.
Okay, let's look at the grammar.
The phrase heavily relies on the conditional. I would. As in, if I were in your position, I would be careful. Why do we do this? Why not just say, be careful? What is the social utility of adding the conditional?
That is the most important question to ask about this phrase because it exposes the underlying power dynamics of the conversation. When you say, be careful, you are issuing a direct imperative. You are giving a command.
Right.
And giving a command intrinsically assumes a position of structural or moral authority over the other person.
Right. You are acting like you are their boss, even if you weren't.
Exactly. And if you are not their boss, or critically, even if you are their boss, but you are trying to cultivate a modern, collaborative, flat hierarchy relationship, issuing a direct parental command can cause severe friction. It damages the sense of adult equality in the relationship. It breeds resentment.
But by using the conditional I would, you are hypothetically stepping into their shoes.
Yes. You are verbally projecting yourself into their reality. You are communicating. I deeply recognize that you have the autonomy, the authority, and the right to make this decision. I am not trying to strip that power away from you.
So it's incredibly respectful.
However, if my brain were temporarily occupying your body, here is the protective action I would take. It is an incredibly sophisticated, elegant way of delivering a severe warning while totally preserving the equality and mutual respect of the relationship. It respects their agency while forcefully guiding their judgment.
It really is a masterful piece of linguistic diplomacy. It allows the speaker to completely distance themselves from the heavy-handed authority of a command, which makes the bitter medicine of the advice much easier for the recipient to swallow.
Absolutely.
If you are listening to this right now and a colleague ever looks at your spreadsheet, your code, or your presentation and says, I would be careful with that, you need to immediately stop what you are doing, take your hands off the keyboard, and deeply reevaluate your life choices.
Stop entirely.
They see a landmine that you are about to step on.
And you should probably buy them a coffee for pointing it out so politely, rather than just letting you detonate.
Absolutely. All right, let's transition to section 3 of the source material. Indirect feedback. We are moving from predicting future risks, like stepping on landmines, to the incredibly sensitive art of evaluating work that has already been done.
Giving feedback is terrifying.
It really is. It is arguably one of the most difficult communicative tasks to execute effectively in any professional setting.
As a manager or a peer, you are constantly forced to walk a tightrope. You have to balance the absolute necessity for high-quality, rigorous output with the psychological need to keep the creator of that output motivated, confident, and engaged.
Right, because if you are too blunt and harsh, you destroy their morale and they disengage.
But if you're too soft and indirect, the errors never get fixed and the product fails.
Which brings us to phrase 5. And I have to say, I think this might be the most deceptive, heartbreaking phrase in the entire English language.
Let's hear it.
The phrase is, it is a good start.
Oh, yeah. The ultimate double-edged sword of corporate feedback.
Let's do the literal breakdown. Does this phrase simply mean that the beginning portion of the work is objectively of high quality? Like, if I wrote a 10-page report, the first page is empirically excellent.
Literally, yes. It praises the genesis of the effort. It communicates that the launch phase of the project or the initial conceptualization was successful and possesses positive qualities.
But the implication is just brutal. The guide explains that while it can theoretically be positive, in practice, it almost always means the work needs a massive amount of improvement.
A staggering, demoralizing amount of improvement. When a senior leader looks at your project and says, it is a good start, What they're actually communicating is, this is nowhere near finished, it is currently wholly inadequate for our needs, and you have a monumental mountain of work left to do before this is acceptable.
The register note says this is extremely common in feedback. Let's look at the example sentence. It is a good start, but the conclusion needs more support.
Notice how the positive, affirming word good is almost instantly neutralized by the reality of the structural flaws that need to be addressed.
Let's weave in the mini dialogue. Imagine you are a junior designer. You've stayed late 3 nights in a row working on a new logo. You send it to your creative director. The next morning, you ask a colleague, "Did she like my draft?"
And the colleague grimaces sympathetically and says, "She said it was a good start."
The usage note issues a stark warning. Listen for what comes after this phrase. I have an analogy for this one. It is a good start. Is the free breadsticks they give you at a restaurant before they serve you a giant, unappetizing plate of everything you did wrong.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's the appetizer to criticism. But why do we do this? Is it just cowardice? Why not just say, this isn't there yet?
It isn't cowardice. It is highly calculated psychological management. If we connect this back to the bigger picture of organizational psychology, the usage of this specific phrase is entirely about managing human morale over the long term.
Managing morale, right.
Think about the intense vulnerability required to present a draft, a mock-up, or a new idea. You have poured your cognitive energy and your time into creating something from nothing, and you are offering it up for judgment.
It's very personal.
If your manager looks at it and bluntly says, "This is fundamentally flawed, you missed the brief, you need to rewrite the whole thing," the employee is going to feel emotionally crushed. Their internal motivation will plummet, they will feel incompetent, and that fight or flight response kicks in again.
Right, they feel attacked by the tribe.
Exactly. But the phrase, "it is a good start," executes a very clever psychological maneuver. It praises the effort of starting. It explicitly validates the kinetic energy the person put in. It says, "I recognize that you did work, and getting a project from 0 to 1 is the hardest part, so I am affirming your competence for doing that."
Oh, so it secures the foundation of their self-esteem so it doesn't collapse when the criticism hits.
Precisely. It ensures the creator doesn't lose all motivation. But simultaneously, by deliberately limiting the praise only to the start, it heavily implies that the end product is nowhere near complete.
That is so subtle.
It brilliantly frames the extensive, grueling revisions not as fixing a failure, but as simply continuing a journey that has already successfully begun. It is a vital psychological tool to keep people working hard without making them feel defeated.
So if you are the listener and you receive an email from your stakeholder that says, "This proposal is a good start," do not celebrate.
Do not go to happy hour.
Do not think the project is 90% done. You must recognize that you are probably at the 20% mark and you need to roll up your sleeves because the real painful work is just beginning.
And you must pay extremely close attention to the sentences that immediately follow that phrase, because that is where the actual literal instructions for the remaining 80% of the work will be hidden.
That perfectly sets up phrase 6, the second part of indirect feedback. You may want to revisit.
This is a phrase that carries immense, almost manipulative diplomatic weight.
Let's start with the literal meaning. Does this phrase mean I literally have the permission or perhaps the internal psychological desire to go look at this document again? Like, hey, if you are feeling nostalgic for that spreadsheet you built yesterday, you have my blessing to go visit it.
Literally, it is framed entirely as a casual suggestion about your own internal subjective preferences. You may want to, meaning it might be your personal desire to undertake this action.
But the implication is completely disconnected from my desires. The guide explains that it politely, but incredibly firmly, suggests that something must be reviewed or changed because it is currently wrong, inaccurate, or inadequate.
It is absolutely not a suggestion about your desires. It is a non-negotiable directive about your required actions, dressed up in a costume of choice.
The register note classifies this as professional and diplomatic. The example sentence is, "You may want to revisit the opening paragraph."
Which translates in the real world to, the opening paragraph is fundamentally weak, confusing, or factually incorrect, and you must rewrite it immediately.
Imagine this scenario for the mini dialogue. You ask your supervisor, "Is the Q3 financial report ready to be sent to the board?" Your supervisor pauses, looks at you, and says, "Almost. You may want to revisit the executive summary."
Ouch again.
The usage note explicitly states that may want to is much softer than you need to. And this brings up a really fascinating ethical and psychological point about the cleverness of this phrasing. It actively masks an authoritative instruction as a helpful, friendly suggestion. Isn't this just gaslighting the employee into thinking they have a choice?
It is certainly a form of rhetorical manipulation, but its purpose is efficiency, not malice.
Yeah.
It frames a required mandatory correction as the recipient's own preference.
Right.
This is a masterclass in indirect communication. Consider the alternative. When a manager says, you need to fix this paragraph, they are acting as an external authoritarian enforcer of quality. They are imposing their will by force of hierarchy onto the employee.
Which, as we've discussed, can create instant resistance or resentment.
Right. But when the manager says, you may want to revisit this, they are rhetorically stepping out of the role of the enforcer and stepping into the role of a peer advisor. They are suggesting that as a highly competent professional who obviously cares deeply about the quality of your own work, you will naturally want to fix this error the moment you look at it again.
Oh, wow. It assumes that both parties share the exact same impossibly high standards. It communicates, I know you are a perfectionist, so I am just gently pointing this out because I know you will want to change it before it goes out. It co-opts the employee's own ego.
It is entirely that. It appeals directly to the employee's professional pride, rather than relying on the manager's brute authority. It is highly effective because it makes the employee feel like they are actively choosing to make the correction to protect their own reputation, rather than being forced to do it by a boss.
So, to the listener, if your boss says you may want to revisit those server logs, do not, under any circumstances, reply with, nah, I'm good, I don't really want to, I'm tired.
That would be a spectacularly fast way to end your employment.
Absolutely. You must possess the fluency to translate that phrase in your head immediately to rerun those logs right now because they are wrong and you will be held accountable.
Exactly. The extreme softness of the language does not in any way reduce the urgency or the mandatory nature of the task. It only serves to protect the interpersonal relationship while the task is being assigned.
Okay, we are moving on to the final category in the source material, Section 4, Careful Agreement. And, at first glance, this category feels counterintuitive.
How so?
Agreement seems like it should be the absolute easiest part of human communication. If we agree, why on earth do we need to be careful?
Because in complex intellectual or corporate environments, agreement is almost never absolute. Even when two people agree on a core principle like, we need to increase revenue, they often have wildly different perspectives on the execution, the timeline, the ethics, or the underlying logic.
Right, the details matter.
We use careful agreement to protect our own intellectual territory, or to add crucial nuance without accidentally starting a hostile argument.
Which brings us to phrase 7, that is fair. Let's look at the literal definition. If a judge in a courtroom says something is fair, they mean it is just, equitable, and objectively true according to the strict letter of the law. Does this phrase literally mean the statement is an objective, universal truth?
Literally, it means the point possesses the quality of fairness. It is reasonable, it is unbiased, and it is logically legitimate.
But the implication, according to the text, is much more guarded and strategic. It means the speaker accepts that a specific point is reasonable, even if they absolutely do not fully agree with the overall argument.
It is the strategic concession of a single battle, not the surrender of the whole war. You are publicly acknowledging that the other person scored a valid logical point, but you are absolutely not surrendering your entire position.
The register note says this is natural and thoughtful conversation. Let's look at the example sentence. That is fair, though I still think the timing matters.
Notice how that is fair functions as a shock absorber. It absorbs the kinetic impact of the other person's argument, neutralizing their aggression, before you smoothly pivot back to your own priority, which, in this case, is the timing.
Imagine this mini dialogue during a tense budget meeting. One person says, we cannot ignore the marketing budget, it's driving all our leads. The financial officer replies, that is fair, though quality of the product matters too.
Yeah, that's very common.
The usage note points out that it signals partial agreement. Earlier we talked extensively about how I see your point, but acts as a conversational bridge and a linguistic eraser. That is fair seems to function very similarly on the surface, but it feels like it carries a bit more genuine validation. Is there a difference?
There is a significant difference in depth. I see your point can often feel a bit procedural, almost patronizing.
Yeah.
It feels like you are just checking a mandatory HR box before you disagree with someone.
Just going through the motion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is fair, however, feels much more substantive. It means the other person's logic actually landed. You listened to it, you cognitively evaluated their point, and you are publicly acknowledging its validity.
It validates the opponent's logic in real time, which rapidly reduces their defensiveness.
Exactly. When someone makes a strong, passionate point and you pause and say, that is fair, you are actively demonstrating intellectual honesty.
Yeah.
You are showing the room that you are not just stubbornly, blindly clinging to your own dogmatic view. You are a rational actor, capable of recognizing the truth in an opposing perspective.
That builds a lot of trust.
It builds immense trust.
Yeah.
And because you have built that trust and validated their intellect, they are now much more open to hearing the counterpoint that you immediately follow up with.
It is like saying, okay, you have a solid brick there. I will let you place that brick in the wall we are building together, but I am still going to place my brick right next to yours.
That is a wonderful, highly accurate way to visualize it. It is the collaborative, iterative construction of the truth, rather than a zero-sum demolition of the other person's ideas.
Which perfectly sets up our final phrase, phrase 8. And honestly, this is my absolute favorite phrase on this entire list. I would frame it differently.
This is an incredibly powerful, advanced linguistic tool.
Let's do the literal breakdown. Am I literally talking about putting a different wooden border around a painting? Or maybe building the structural 2x4 frame of a house?
Literally, yes. You are talking about the structure, the border, or the physical container that surrounds and holds something. You are talking about the perimeter.
But the implication here is so deep and strategic. The guide explains that it means the speaker would explain or present the idea in another way. The core facts aren't necessarily wrong, but the perspective or the context is.
This is advanced, elite-level diplomacy. You are not debating the raw data. You are debating the context in which the data is being viewed and interpreted.
The register note rightly calls this advanced and professional. The example sentence is, I would frame it differently for a non-technical audience.
That implies that the highly technical explanation you just gave might be 100% factually accurate, but it is socially or practically the entirely wrong approach for the specific people in that room. It will confuse them or alienate them.
Imagine this mini dialogue. A data analyst presents a chart showing a massive drop in user retention and says, our product is failing. The CEO looks at the chart and says, is this explanation wrong? The chief strategy officer replies, not exactly. I would frame it differently.
Classic pivot.
The usage note says, frame means to shape the way an idea is presented. I have to ask you, based on your experience analyzing corporate communication, is this the ultimate intellectual power move in a meeting?
In many ways, yes, it absolutely is. And here is why it is so powerful. Most arguments, especially in business, get stuck in a rigid binary trap. Is this true or false? Are you right or am I right? That is a zero-sum game. Someone has to win and someone has to lose face.
Right. If I say profits are down because the marketing team failed, and you say profits are down because the sales team failed, we are just smashing our heads together. Someone is going to leave that room angry.
Exactly. It's trench warfare. But when you interject and say, I would frame it differently, you completely step out of the binary trap. You elevate yourself above the trenches. You shift the entire paradigm of the debate.
You change the lens.
You are subtly telling the room, the problem isn't the facts we are arguing about. The problem is the flawed lens through which we are all looking at the facts.
You are literally changing the rules of the game while the game is being played.
You really are. You elevate the entire conversation. Instead of squabbling over petty details, you position yourself as the visionary who defines the context. For example, if the team is arguing, we failed because we didn't spend enough money on ads, you might step in and say, I would frame it differently. I think what we actually discovered is that throwing money at a fundamental product design flaw doesn't work. We didn't fail at marketing. We succeeded in testing the product's limits.
Wow. You didn't tell them they were wrong about the money being gone, but you completely redefined what the actual problem was. You took total control of the narrative, and you did it without attacking anyone.
It is an incredibly sophisticated way to disagree without ever actually using the aggressive word disagree. It shows that you're thinking at a higher level of strategy. For the advanced learner, or any professional aiming for leadership, mastering the concept of framing in a professional context is a massive leap forward in true fluency and influence.
Okay, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, dissecting the deep psychology, the neurobiology, and the sociology behind these 8 subtle phrases. But understanding the theory in a podcast setting is great. Executing it in practice is much better. The source material actually includes a practice section designed to help advanced learners spot the difference and produce these phrases in real time.
This is a crucial exercise. Recognizing these concepts while you are relaxed and listening to us is one thing, but producing them under the extreme pressure and stress of a high-stakes meeting is an entirely different skill set.
So, we are going to run through a rapid-fire drill to cement this. I'm going to throw the direct statement at you. The blunt, literal, highly dangerous way of speaking that triggers the fight or flight response. And you are going to provide the better, subtle English version from the text and gives a quick one-sentence reminder of the specific social shift occurring. Let's run it.
I'm ready.
Here's the direct version. I disagree.
The better version. I see your point, but I think we need more context. The social shift here is about providing cognitive validation before introducing the opposing view, which keeps the conversation collaborative rather than combat-oriented.
Transitioning from combat to collaboration. Love it. Next direct phrase. This is a bad idea.
Better version. I am not sure that is ideal. The social shift here is face-saving. Instead of attacking their judgment, you frame the rejection as a mutual collaborative pursuit of an impossibly perfect solution, softening the ego blow.
Pursuing perfection instead of accusing them of failure. Next direct phrase. This will be difficult.
Better version. That might be tricky. The implication here is de-escalation. By using a slightly casual, playful word, you signal a major risk without inciting group panic, maintaining an atmosphere of calm problem-solving.
Shrinking the disaster down to a puzzle. Perfect. Next direct phrase. Change this section.
Better version. You may want to revisit this section. This is about masking an authoritative command as a helpful, peer-level suggestion. It preserves the sense of equality and co-opts the recipient's own professional pride to get the correction made.
Flattering manipulation at its finest. And finally, the direct phrase. This is not wrong, but I would explain it another way.
Better version. I would frame it differently. The social shift here is moving the debate out of a zero-sum true-false argument and elevating it to a higher-level discussion about context, narrative, and perspective.
That drill really drives home the vast difference between the two styles. When you hear them side by side like that, the direct versions sound almost violently aggressive, don't they?
They sound incredibly jarring. Once you become highly attuned to the nuances of subtle English, hearing someone use completely direct, unvarnished speech in a professional setting can physically feel like a shove.
Okay, as we bring this extensive deep dive to a close, let's do a final rapid-fire recap of the most useful linguistic tools we have extracted from today's source material. I will run through the list of 8 so you, the listener, can lock these into your active memory. Number 1, I am not sure that is ideal.
Number 2, I see your point, but...
Number 3, that might be tricky.
Number 4, I would be careful with that.
Number 5, it is a good start.
Number 6, you may want to revisit.
Number 7, that is fair.
Number 8, I would frame it differently.
A truly essential, sophisticated toolkit for anyone operating in an advanced English environment, whether you are a native speaker or a learner. So, we have reached the end of our outline, but before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final mission, directly inspired by the guide. I want you to actively listen for these soft phrases in English this week. When you are in a tense meeting, or watching a corporate interview on the news, or reading through a long email chain, pause and ask yourself, what is the speaker really doing?
Are they actually agreeing with the person, or are they politely warning them, subtly disagreeing, or desperately trying to soften some brutal feedback?
You need to become a social detective. You have to look past the literal vocabulary, look past the green code raining down the screen, and start reading the invisible interpersonal rules of the interaction.
And as a quick reminder, based on the sign-off note in our factual source document, don't forget to subscribe to the Pathlight English channel for more incredible resources on mastering these advanced language skills. We want to thank you for joining us for this incredibly enlightening deep dive.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own this week. We talked extensively today about how these phrases act as social lubrication. We talked about how the phrase, "it is a good start," is essentially a pleasant appetizer before the main course of severe criticism. But if our entire professional lives are spent navigating these incredibly complex, carefully constructed, polite illusions just to protect each other's fragile egos, when, if ever, is it actually safe to just tell the raw, unvarnished truth? And if a culture loses the ability to speak directly entirely, how do we ever know where we actually stand? Keep an ear out for that this week.